Hail travelers, and welcome to the Knight's Realm. Here in the realm of Camelot, I, the Guardian Knight, venture deep into the archives of popular culture and entertainment to bring you all my own perspective on such matters. Dark of the Moon was initially planned to be the final film in Michael Bay's Transformers franchise, and nearly everyone expected that it would be. Though Paramount Pictures would continue looking to capitalize on this franchise, seeking out other directors to helm its next entry, few actually expected to ever see Transformers 4. Until Michael Bay decided he was willing to return to the helm. And thus, Transformers Age of Extinction was born, being released to rather mixed reactions. Those who already weren't fond of the live-action take on the Transformers mythos, both fans of the wider IP and general audiences, were more than a little peeved to see the films returning, and even fans of the first three were divided in their opinions of this new film. Some loved it as much, if not more, than the previous ones, others liked it but acknowledged its decreasing quality, and others despised it, feeling that the story had wrapped up well enough back in Dark of the Moon. Of course, the real question here is what is my opinion of it. As with all prior films, except Revenge, which I despise with the heat of 10,000 suns, mixed. On the one hand, I like that new Autobots are introduced and actually given more character, something we haven't really seen since the first movie. I also enjoy the concept of humans turning on the Autobots, giving this movie a very G.I. Joe Renegades feel. Underrated show, that thing was awesome and deserved more seasons. The sort of soft reboot vibe is one that these movies desperately needed, a sort of clean slate, so I like that part as well. Significantly less US military shenanigans as well. Of course, on the other hand, there's instead a lot of ham-fisted China-based scenes indicative of the time period in which this movie came out. And while I liked that the bots actually had character, I wasn't a fan of all the character. Drift, one of my favorite characters from the comics, was turned into a Japanese stereotype, and Crosshairs was a bit of a jerk. Hound, while I did like him, should really have been named Bulkhead, as that's who he's more akin to. And of course, the main draw of this film, the Dinobots, only featured in the last half hour or so of this almost 3-hour-long movie. The length of the film is another problem, or rather the pacing is. There are so many either repetitive or completely unnecessary scenes that seem to exist just to pad the runtime when they could be used to develop our characters, especially our villains, Lockdown and Galvatron, both of whom vanish when no longer relevant to the story, and then crop up again when the plot calls for them. Optimus doesn't even get to fight Galvatron in the final battle. Last time we see him, he's shouting, "No!" and then goes all Dr. Claw at the very end. "I'll get you next time, Gadget Prime." A real shame because we finally have Frank Welker's Megatron alongside Peter Cullen's Optimus in these films, and they share a grand total of one scene together. And Lockdown, while he has an undeniable presence, is not appearing in this film for what feels like half the movie. His lines also often feel clumsy and disjointed, a trait he shares with human antagonist Harold Attinger, who I actually do like. Kelsey Grammer puts in a stellar performance, but many of Attinger's lines are just stilted. Some of them make Padme's dialogue in Attack of the Clones seem Shakespearean in comparison. Secondary antagonist Agent Savoy is a cringeworthy caricature of a hard-boiled federal agent, who it seems like the movie wanted us to believe was cool, but just came across as try-hard. Our human protagonists aren't much better either. In fact, one of them is way worse. Cade Jager, played by Marky Mark himself, is a weird character. Much like Sam before him, he feels like a loser, but it's worse in some ways because he's supposed to be a grown man, not a high school junior. It feels like the film wanted us to empathize with a dude who's down on his luck, but it's difficult not to blame Cade's luck on his own choices. He's also the most Bostonian-sounding Texan I have ever heard. His relationship with his daughter, Tessa, would be a highlight of the film if she wasn't an insufferable brat played by the girl who played Katara in Shyamalan's Last Airbender movie. Oh, wait, sorry, I forgot. There is no movie in Ba Sing Se. And of course, the absolute worst human character of the lot, maybe in the entire franchise, Shane Dyson. Also known as Sir Noncelot, Sir Romeo and Juliet Laws, a certified minor. Yeah, this guy's a creep. A creep with the worst Irish accent I have ever heard, which is weird. Because Jack Rayner is an Irishman, but for some reason he put on this weird Irish, Australian, West Coast American sounding hybrid accent for the film when he could have just kept his actual accent. in the interviews I've seen with him, it sounds so much better and far more natural than whatever he was doing in the movie. So yeah, human protagonists are not, in fact, a step up from Witwicky and co. In some ways, they're a step down. The only really enjoyable human characters were Stanley Tucci's Joshua Joyce, who is delightfully enigmatic, and Stanley Tucci I always enjoy, and T.J. Miller's Lucas, who is unfortunately killed at the end of the first act by lockdown. As in prior movies, Optimus's characterization suffers here as well, partially due to the fact that the film, as before, refuses to dwell for long on the robots outside of action scenes. And the few heart-to-heart scenes we do get with Optimus are short. And then there's the fact that he offs Attinger at the end, a moment that should be a massive shift in the character, but is just played off as another body to add to the pile. And the final and biggest problem of this movie, it feels like 3 movies crammed into one. We have humans turning on Autobots and building their own Transformers. We have Lockdown hunting down Prime for what was originally intended to be the Quintessons, and we have the return of Megatron. Not to mention the Cade subplot, the whole Dinobot thing, and the fact that the Seed is the literal worst MacGuffin in the franchise. It's basically the Allspark all over again, but far less interesting. So with these critiques out of the way, we can dive into the rewrite proper. Unlike my previous rewrites, this one will not have the same level of reverence for the original plot, as I am dividing 2 of the plot lines into 2 separate movies, Lockdown deserves his own film to shine in, and eschewing the third entirely, no Galvatron this go-round. I will stick as closely to the actual KSI Cemetery Wind plot as I can, but considering that it was still a jumbled mess in the actual film, as close as I can is gonna be pretty far off. The first act will be mostly similar to the actual film, but from Act 2 onwards, it may as well be a whole new movie. Hey, chance to flex my creative muscles. Now, join me as we delve deep beneath the castle and begin our quest. This is the first film in the franchise that does not start with an Optimus narration, and I'm actually okay with that. It fits the vibe that the film is going for, the fact that the Autobots are in hiding, so I will actually be keeping that the same. What I will be changing is the order of the actual content in the first little bit of this movie. In the original film, we had a prologue with the Quintessons wiping out the dinosaurs, included likely for the sole reason that the Dinobots themselves were going to be introduced later on and used in all the marketing. And then these metallicized dinos are found by a team of geologists, and then we cut back and forth between Cade and Cemetery Wind for a while. I am going to instead start this movie on the excavation, but not an excavation of Transformium, stupid name. No, of Energon crystals, the result of the Allspark's dispersal in the first film. Continuity. At first, the people excavating the Energon are not visible, and the camera makes it seem like it could be an Autobot or Decepticon mining team. But as a torch is lit, we see that it is, in fact, a human excavation team, who begin loading the Energon into a truck marked KSI, setting that corporation up early rather than randomly introducing it 45 minutes to an hour in. From there, a narration begins, narrated by Attinger, instead of Optimus Prime. This narration is initially played over KSI trucks carrying Energon, as well as submersibles lifting Decepticon remains from the Laurentian Abyss, and other trucks carrying crates marked with the Nest logo, before cutting to a dark room with several agents around a large table, revealing that this narration is, in fact, a debriefing. It's been 5 years since the Battle of Chicago, the event that changed our world forever. The Decepticon threat was all but vanquished, with most of them going off-world after their leader was killed. They left a few stragglers, though, stragglers that we've been hunting down. My personal squad, Cemetery Wind, is comprised of some of the best CIA operatives in the business. Ex-military, commandos, hired killers, the perfect alien robot hunters. After the battle, though the Autobots were allowed sanctuary, all joint operations between them and the US military were dissolved. The organization known as Nest and all its assets were turned over to the CIA, to me. The alien technology contained therein has been invaluable. With the help of Kinetic Solutions Incorporated, Cemetery Wind has been fully equipped with the latest in weapons, tracking, and vehicular technology, allowing them, us, to more efficiently hunt our quarry. Less than a dozen Decepticons remain on Earth now, but our task is nowhere close to being finished. Attinger throws face cards marked with Autobot faces, some familiar, some new, and some with large red X's on them, onto the table. The camera zooms into the card bearing Ratchet's face, and we cut to a nighttime sting operation being undertaken by Cemetery Wind. The first part of this scene will be near identical to the scene in the actual movie, which is probably one of the only times I'll be saying that in this rewrite, with the sole exceptions being that Lockdown is not here, and that the agents are armed not with human firearms, because bullets don't hurt Transformers in my version, but human-scaled Cybertronic energy weapons. Ratchet's whereabouts are uncovered by Savoy and his men, and he is forced to flee. When they have him cornered, he transforms and attempts to reason with them.
Hold your fire. I'm an Autobot. A friend.
You're an alien. Aliens are no friends of mine.
Stay back. I don't want to hurt you.
Last mistake you'll ever make. Savoy signals to a sniper on a nearby roof, who unleashes a burst of blaster fire that strikes Ratchet on the shoulder and drops him to his knees. The Autobot medic is shocked at the damage output, as well as being in severe pain.
How? Where did you get that kind of firepower?
Same place you're going. Or your shell, at least. He signals to the rest of his men, all of whom aim their weapons at the injured Autobot and open fire. Ratchet has no recourse for this onslaught, as he is peppered with hundreds of blaster bolts from miniaturized, but no less powerful, Energon weapons. Before long, he succumbs to his injuries and collapses to the ground in a manner not too dissimilar to Prowl's death from the '86 movie. From there, we cut back to Attinger, who is talking to a distorted figure on a large monitor.
Your intel was accurate. It was right where you said it'd be.
And the weapons?
Effective. Beyond effective. I shall have to thank Mr. Joyce personally.
You are satisfied, then?
Very.
Good. I have more intelligence for you. Valuable intelligence.
On what?
The location of Optimus Prime. Cut to 2 weeks later. Country music plays as the camera pans over the Texas countryside. We see a truck being driven by our human lead, Cade Jager, not played by Mark Wahlberg, as, again, that was terrible casting. Who would I cast? I don't have a definitive, but I'll use this image of Jensen Ackles, as he would have been 36 at the time of this movie's release, so decently old enough to play someone who has a 17-year-old kid, especially since Cade canonically had Tessa at age 17 himself. He's also actually from Texas and an incredibly charismatic performer. Considering Jensen's other obligations at the time, this probably wouldn't have been possible, but these rewrites are all, at their core, made with the expectation that I have the budget, actors, and time sufficient to make them properly. An absolute pipe dream, but it worked for Lord of the Rings. Anyway, Cade is a salvage yard worker in this version, one with dreams of eventually becoming an inventor, instead of being a single dad who tries to provide for himself, his teenage daughter, and his employee/best friend without a stable job. He dabbles in inventing at his home workshop, but it isn't his sole source of income. Cade drives into work where his brother-in-law, Lucas, is waiting for him. The pair of them interact for a bit. We establish their relationship and mention Emily, Cade's late wife, who both of them still remember fondly. As in this version of events, Lucas is her brother, not just Cade's stoner friend. The scrapyard is filled with what appears to be the same old junk, but tucked away behind an old pile of junk is a familiar but heavily damaged red and blue cab-over-engine semi-truck. This scene will be similar to Sam's first encounter with Bumblebee, with Cade climbing up onto the cab and dusting off the Autobot insignia on the side of the door, which turns into Prime's left shoulder in robot mode. Cade looks at it, recognizing that he'd seen it somewhere before, but not remembering where. He decides to buy the truck himself and take it home to work on it. A few hours later, Tessa comes home from school. I have zero clue who I'd cast as her, so I'll just use a still from the movie. The central human plot of this film will be based around the father-daughter relationship, minus the creepy boyfriend. No Lucky Charms in this version of events. It will be clear that there's a bit of tension between the two characters based not around Cade being a deadbeat, but their different forms of grieving. Emily's death will be rather recent, and neither are handling it well. Cade grieves by burying himself in his work and trying to ignore the sadness. Tessa, on the other hand, is letting herself feel everything. She's already moody, as a 17-year-old tends to be, but the grief has made her more angry than anything. Yet it's still evident that the two love each other, so it's not a toxic home life or anything. But neither are grieving healthily, and that's going to cause a rift as the plot goes on. Lucas seems to be the only one who's truly let himself grieve, as he seems fairly well adjusted and reasonably lighthearted. He absolutely misses his sister, but he's not angry at the universe like Tessa or numb to feeling like Cade. Lucas is going to play a pretty big role in both their arcs, despite the fact that he's not long for this world. We get a scene between the family, with Tessa getting frustrated at her dad for focusing on that hunk of junk, as she calls the truck. Cade rebuffs the comment and keeps working while Lucas tries to defuse the situation. Eventually, Lucas convinces Cade to spend the evening as a family and save the world for tomorrow. Cade agrees, and the father and daughter undergo a surface-level reconciliation, leaving it painfully obvious that there's more to discuss. But neither are ready for that conversation yet. The camera focuses on the truck, and we hear the sound of blaster fire, as well as the distant voice of Sam Witwicky. "Tell Carly and Daniel I love them." "No! Sam!" Closing that scene, we cut back to Attinger meeting with the head of the CIA and the White House representative. The original scene, while good in theory, was weird in execution. The White House rep was a strange character, and the CIA boss was a non-character who just kind of sat there. We'll keep Attinger vaguely hinting that the Autobots are no longer allies and, in truth, no longer allowed sanctuary in the States either, though this is not in accordance with what the President, Congress, and Supreme Court decided. We make it clear that Attinger is acting above the law in a sort of personal vendetta against the Autobots. Turns out Attinger's son was at Ground Zero when Megatron took over the Lincoln Memorial, as one of the soldiers trying to extricate the Decepticon warlord. Savoy, as in the original movie, lost his sister when Chicago was conquered, and both blame all Transformers for the events of Dark of the Moon, not just the Decepticons. Attinger in particular despises the Autobots for hiding while Megatron took over the world, despite the fact that the Autobots were in no position to prevent that first strike. Their only recourse was to sneak into Chicago and take out Megatron and Sentinel. And of course, Cybertron's arrival complicated things further, creating a massive chasm in the middle of the city that people were forced to build around. In these next few movies, there will be signs of the devastation caused by Cybertron throughout the world. The Chicago Canyon, the SoCal Islands, the Bay of Beijing, the Johannesburg Crater, and so on. Some places have had their weather patterns permanently altered. Mountains have sprung up in the middle of cities, valleys have appeared where once there were mountains, some lakes and seas have dried up and new ones have appeared. Basically, Cybertron caused a mini-apocalypse that changed the face of the Earth forever. Very Book of Revelation. This scene demonstrates Attinger's motive and why much of the country is okay with him doing what he's doing, even if it's technically illegal. The President, however, is not as keen on Attinger and is looking for any opportunity to shut him down. After this meeting, Attinger returns to his office, where the big monitor activates, showing the distorted features of the benefactor once again.
"What happened?" "Prime was in Mexico City, like you said. We had it cornered, but it got away." "How?" "We gave it all we had. Bastard was tougher than we expected." "Tougher than you expected? This is not some Vehicon soldier. It is Optimus Prime." "We'll get it. Don't worry. It was damaged. It couldn't have gone far." "Which direction did he go in?" "North. Last our boys saw it, it was crossing the border into Texas." "He cannot be allowed to remain free." "It won't. I already have agents trolling the state. If it's there, we'll find it." "See that you do, Mr. Attinger. I would hate for my aid to be wasted through rank incompetence."
The screen deactivates, and Attinger is left alone. He pulls out his cell phone and calls Savoy. We cut back to the Jager house. Cade wakes up in the middle of the night and goes to the workshop. He investigates the truck a little more and notices some odd things. The next day in the afternoon, Lucas rolls up looking for Cade, telling Tessa that he hadn't been at work. Both of them go into the workshop and find Cade working on the truck. They ask where he'd been and what he's doing, and he delivers the line, "I think we found a transformer." Through some persuasion, he's able to convince Lucas and Tessa to help him reactivate the truck. In this version of events, there's no reward for turning in Autobots, as, again, Attinger's non-Decepticon activity is illegal, so Lucas and Tessa aren't motivated to turn the truck in. There will be other opportunities to tip Cemetery Wind off, however. After a montage of working on the truck, lights begin to glow within its machinery. The engine revs and the scene shifts to a flashback in Mexico City. We see Sam Witwicky and Optimus Prime being pursued by Cemetery Wind in blaster-mounted APCs. Optimus suffers a glancing blow to his side, and the two are forced to hide in an abandoned building. Optimus transforms and attempts to patch himself up.
"Optimus, you alright?" "I will live.
Well, if we're able to get out of this mess, you will. We're surrounded. Where'd these guys get energon weapons? You never shared that tech with anyone, not even Nest.
I do not know, and I don't like it.
Only seems to have grazed you. Can't be as strong as a real blaster, then.
No, that blast was powerful enough to kill an ordinary Autobot. If I were not a Prime, I would be dead.
Sam's eyes widen as he looks between Optimus and the goon squad now aiming their weapons at the barn. Plenty strong enough to perforate this building, then.
I am afraid so.
And even if we make it out the back, their sights will all be trained on us. Only hope is to fight back.
No. They may have our weapons, but they lack our armored plating. Were I to return fire, I would annihilate them.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Sam, I swore an oath when I landed on this planet that I would never harm humans. If I harm those weaker than me, I am no better than a Decepticon.
Optimus, it's them or us. If we don't do something...
No!
Sam stares at Optimus, realizing that his old friend isn't going to budge on this. Optimus's greatest strength is his honor and his compassion, but that's also his greatest weakness. It took the Autobot leader 2,000 years to finally finish Megatron for good, after all. Sighing deeply, Sam reaches into his jacket and pulls out his own piece. He makes sure it's loaded and walks towards the door.
Sam, what are you doing?
Giving you a chance to escape.
No. Sam!
You gave your life for me all those years ago, Optimus. Time I return the favor. When you hear me take a shot, start driving. And don't stop driving till you've lost these creeps.
Sam.
Sam ignores him and steps out the door. The Cemetery Wind agents train their blasters on him. He pulls out a cell phone and dials his dad's number.
Sammy?
Hey, Dad. Just wanted to say goodbye.
Goodbye? Where are you?
Can't talk long, Dad. Listen, I need you to go to Chip's place.
Chip's? Why?
Tell Carly and Daniel I love them.
No! Sam!
Love you, Dad. Bye. He hangs up and turns back to Optimus. Next time you see B, tell him goodbye for me. We had a good run, Optimus. And I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Sam slams the door shut and opens fire, taking out one of the goons before they can react. Optimus transforms and explodes out the back of the barn while Sam continues unloading. He takes out 3 more guys before Cemetery Wind is able to recover. As Optimus drives away, we hear blaster fire in the background. Back in the present, Optimus fully comes back online.
Sam!
He transforms, scaring Cade, Lucas, and Tessa. He reacts as if he's being attacked, flailing about before unsheathing his blade. His eyes are wild as he swipes at the air, far above where the humans are.
Easy, easy!
Optimus's eyes focus, and he sees the 3 humans, 2 cowering, 1 hands extended in front of him.
Who are you? Where am I?
Name's Cade Jager. You're in my workshop.
Why have you brought me here?
I found you in a junkyard. You had a lot of damage, so I fixed you. Optimus glances down at his chassis and realizes that all his vitals have been at least partially repaired, though he is still far from fully functional. He sheathes his blade and begins to calm down.
Cade, I am in your debt. My name is Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots.
Autobots? Which ones were they?
The good guys.
Tessa asks what happened to Optimus.
I was ambushed by humans wielding Cybertronian weaponry.
Cyber what?
Cybertron, my home planet.
Why were they attacking you? Aren't you guys our allies?
There are some among your people who blame all of mine for the war. It would seem that their hatred has grown hot enough to declare war on us. I thank you for your aid, Cade Jager, but now I must take my
Optimus tries to stand, but pain shoots through his body, dropping him to his knees.
Easy. You're not at 100 yet. I must go. My Autobots must be warned. You're not going anywhere in your condition. I don't care if you are a highly advanced being from outer space. You try to leave now, you'll end up a wreck on the side of the road. Easy pickings for whoever's hunting you. You are right. Listen, just settle in and let me work my magic. I'm an engineer. I'll get you back on your feet in no time. Thank you, Cade. Once again. No problem. Not every day I get to work on a giant alien robot. Optimus sits down, the ground shaking as he does, because he's absolutely massive. Tessa's kinda freaked and runs out of the workshop. Lucas starts after her, but Cade insists that he help him. Optimus takes note of this and gets a sad look on his face. He turns to Cade. Why are you helping me? Curiosity at first, but now I see you, well, any decent person would do the same. Optimus' trust in humans has wavered slightly since Dark of the Moon. He of course remembers Sam, Carly, Ron, Chip, and Lennox fondly, but after dealing with the human collaborator, Sector 7, the American government forcing the Autobots off-world, Nest being dissolved, and now being pursued by Cemetery Wind, his faith is shakier than it used to be. Before, he was willing to recognize that humans, like any Autobot, were flawed but had potential to be great. But recently he's seen them behave quite a bit like Decepticons. That being said, however, they are still humans, smaller and more fragile than even the weakest Cybertronian, unlike the Decepticons who, in some cases, the weakest were stronger than the strongest Autobot. This will be a major part of Optimus' arc in this film, whether he is willing to abandon his vow to never harm a human, or if he will decide that enough is enough and finally retaliate. In my opinion, this is a far more narratively satisfying and in-character arc than his existing one, which had more to do with not abandoning the humans, which is fine, but beggars belief. I'm just not a fan of Grumpimus Prime. I don't see Optimus just abandoning the humans at this point, especially after Cade, Shane, and Tessa put their lives in danger to help the Autobots, not to mention all the other humans that Optimus knows and admires. Prime's not the kind of guy to judge an entire species based off of a few bad eggs, unlike Attinger and his ilk. Thus, the character arc in the original movie felt kind of out of character. If he were choosing to leave in order to avoid further conflict, that'd be one thing. He'd be saving the Autobots and ensuring that he never had to fire a shot at the humans. The problem with this arc is twofold. One, Galvatron and a few other Decepticons remain at large. Preventing the seed from being detonated does not prevent Galvatron from trying again. Thus, leaving is counterintuitive. And secondly, it doesn't sufficiently challenge Optimus. The original arc just got him back to how he was pre-Age of Extinction, and this slightly revised one where he leaves to avoid conflict is Prime taking the path of least resistance, which just isn't interesting. The fun part when it comes to writing Paragons in a realistic way is when that Paragon's ideals are challenged and they are forced to either adapt or be destroyed. This is what made Ned Stark, for example, so compelling and tragic, as his unbending honor unfortunately led to his demise. Well, that and Joffrey being a sadistic little creep. In order to ensure that Optimus continues to grow as a character and doesn't remain stagnant, he too has to have his core beliefs challenged, which is why I wanted to rewrite this movie instead of leaving it on Dark of the Moon. So the question becomes, will Optimus be forced to bend, or will he break? I love challenging my character's beliefs. Now, another criticism I had of the film was how quickly Optimus and Cade forged a bond. Of course, Optimus is the kind of guy to throw himself into danger to defend a complete stranger, let alone one who saved his life. But Cade is a different story. I mean, yeah, he's a good guy, but why on earth would he choose to protect Optimus over Tessa? He's known Prime for what, a day? What non-abusive parent would put their child's life in danger for a stranger? And not only a stranger, a fugitive. If Cade lived alone, this would be noble. As it stands, it just comes across as both stupid and contrived. So to remedy that, we will spend a little more time with Optimus at the Jaegers getting repaired. Not a long time, mind you, as I don't want to grind the story to a halt, but we will show Cade repairing and getting to know Optimus over the course of the few days, as well as showing growing animosity from Tessa, who's getting sick of her dad spending all his time with a robot.
At one point, Tessa brings her dad lunch and slams it on a desk when he won't even acknowledge her before storming out. Once again, Optimus notices.
Cade, should you not be focusing on your family more than me?
Who, Tessa? She'll be fine. She's just in a mood lately.
I may not be human, but I've spent enough time on this planet to tell the difference between a mood and genuine hurt. You should cherish your time with your daughter, Cade Jager. You never know when that time will run out.
Optimus closes his eyes for a moment as images of Sam flash across the screen. Though Sam is no longer the main human character, he will hang like a shadow over this narrative, as Optimus blames himself for Sam's demise, while at the same time wondering what else he could have done. Torn between his head, which tells him that he should have fired back at Cemetery Wind when he had the chance, and his spark, which tells him that not attacking them was the right call, but that there had to have been something more he could have done. In this interaction, we see Optimus delivering his usual wisdom, while struggling to find wisdom that he can rely on. The collective wisdom of the Primes is no help either, as no other Prime was ever put in a position like this, except Sentinel and the Fallen, both of whom chose the path of the aggressor, which is part of what Optimus fears for himself. After all, Sentinel Prime was once the greatest of all Cybertronians, and look at how he ended up. If Optimus were to consider firing back at the humans to be for the greater good, would he just become another Sentinel? Interesting question. Cade looks as if he's pondering Optimus's words, and nods. You're right, Optimus, I should check on her. I'll be right back.
I will be here.
Cade leaves Optimus alone. He attempts to talk to Tessa, but even when he tries to close the gap, she's still a little distant. It doesn't help that she's got her back against the wall as well. We show time passing and we cut back to Optimus, who catches a glimpse of the night sky through the partially open door. He considers stepping outside for a moment, but thinks better of it, not wanting to draw any undue attention to himself or put Cade and his family in danger. Unfortunately, Cemetery Wind is closing in. Using an energon detector, they follow Prime's trail from Mexico City to the salvage yard, and from there to Casa Jager. They're not the only ones following the trail, however, as a black 1967 Camaro with yellow detailing pursues them closely, but not closely enough to be noticed. Lucas arrives at the house the following day to check up on his niece and brother-in-law. There's a bit of interaction with the family before several black SUVs and some armed APCs roll onto the property. Savoy and his men confront the Jagers about Optimus Prime at gunpoint. Tension builds as Optimus hears the energon weapons power up and both groups shouting at each other. Drones fly around the premises. In the cornfields, the mysterious Camaro draws closer. Cade's gotten to know Optimus at this point, so he rebuffs Savoy at first. His resolve begins to waver when Tessa is pinned to the ground and has a blaster aimed at her head. Cade's distressed shouts remind Optimus of his own when Sam was killed, and he bursts out of the workshop. He will not let this happen again.
Here I am! Come and get me!
Instead of opening fire on the agents, he transforms and barrels into a few of their vehicles. Self-preservation kicks in and the Cemetery Wind goons dive out of the way of the approaching semi. He does not fire his weapon at them, just allowing his sheer size to speak for itself. He does shoot a couple of the currently unmanned APCs, however. He also damages some of the drones in the onslaught. Optimus lures the remaining cars away from the Jagers, but Savoy orders some of his men to stay behind and leave no witnesses. The black and yellow car drives into frame, scattering the agents. Its door opens, and a familiar voice from within beckons. Get in! Cade, Lucas, and Tessa need no further prodding as they enter the oddly driverless car. Cade picks up a damaged Cemetery Wind drone before entering and notices the Autobot insignia on the wheel.
You a friend of Prime's?
More like family. Name's Bumblebee. Now hold on. Bumblebee takes off down the road in Optimus' direction. Prime evades what blaster fire he can, though he does take a few minor hits. Bumblebee draws closer and activates a new upgrade, his Stingers. These fire an electrical blast that shorts out machinery, deadly against Decepticons, annoying against humans. He hits two vehicles, which are brought to a halt in the middle of the road as he speeds past them. He strikes into another APC, causing it to veer off the road, though the driver and other passengers are alive. Savoy's car and one APC are all that remain. Optimus lures them into the lot of an abandoned warehouse and transforms. Savoy and the other driver come to a stop.
Nowhere left to run this time. Who said anything about running?
Savoy's eyes widen as Optimus unsheaths his blade.
You wouldn't dare, you coward! Wouldn't I?
He pulls out his axe and swings it around. His eyes flit to behind Savoy as Bumblebee comes into view. Savoy turns to the APC gunner.
Shoot him! Now!
The turret fires and Optimus dodges, charging straight at the APC. The gunner and driver bail out, as Optimus figured they would, and he chops the vehicle in half. Savoy grabs a blaster from the seat of his car and aims. Prime! Look out! B transforms, gently depositing the humans on the ground and blasting the rifle with his stinger. The shock stuns Savoy and he drops the weapon, but he is uninjured. He leaps back into the car as if looking for something. B approaches Optimus.
It is good to see you again, old friend.
Bumblebee has swapped his color scheme around into being predominantly black, and this will remain his color scheme in this film because I am a fan of palette swap Bumblebee. Makes him look sleeker and deadlier, which fits an older version of the character. You too, Optimus. We better get out of here, though. The charge on my stingers should be wearing off on the other vehicles.
Indeed.
The two Autobots transform.
Cade, quickly!
The humans run towards the Autobots, but Lucas unfortunately falls behind. Savoy grabs what looks to be a grenade from the case in the car. Tessa and Cade are able to reach Bumblebee, but Savoy throws the grenade, which catches Lucas at its blast radius. Cade, Tessa, and the Autobots are forced to watch in horror as Lucas is completely disintegrated. The Autobots peel out and drive away. Somber music plays as the Jagers mourn their uncle and brother-in-law. After crossing the western border into New Mexico and driving a ways past, Optimus and Bumblebee come to a stop at a long-abandoned gas station. The Autobots transform.
Cade, I am sorry for the loss of your brother. I never wanted to put more human lives at risk.
Not your fault, Optimus. Tessa disagrees with that sentiment, saying that if Cade hadn't brought Optimus home, none of this would have happened. Bumblebee tries to interject, but Optimus stops him.
It would be best if the two of you got some rest. Bumblebee will remain here with you while I go out on patrol.
The humans enter the gas station, but the tension has only grown at this point.
Bumblebee, before I go, I must tell you something.
It's about Sam, isn't it? Optimus nods somberly.
He was cut down by those humans. He gave his life so that I could escape.
He clenches his fist.
I should not have allowed it.
Bumblebee puts a hand on Optimus's forearm, because he can't reach his shoulder. You're alive. That's what matters. We can't survive this without you.
What do you mean?
You're not the only ones who's been attacked. We've lost contact with most of the others in the States. Only the ones at the Sanctuary are accounted for.
What of Ratchet, Wheeljack, RC, Jetfire, Mirage?
You know Mirage. If he doesn't want to be found, he won't be. Jetfire's still in the UK. It's not as bad over there. RC, last I heard, she was in the Andes region. It's Ratchet and Wheeljack that I'm worried about. Wheeljack disappeared not long after we split up a year ago. Ratchet was over near New Orleans, but we stopped hearing from him almost a month back.
This is troubling. We will make our way to the Sanctuary tomorrow morning and regroup. From there, we will decide our next move.
Right, Optimus. Optimus transforms and sets out on patrol. In the gas station, Tessa is not talking to Cade. He is bothered by this, but instead of pushing his luck, he decides to analyze the drone. He notices that it's only half Earth-based, recognizing some similar components to Optimus's internal workings. A new day dawns, and as the pair of Autobots and their new human companions drive, Optimus scans a new vehicle mode as Bumblebee had. The same as he actually scanned in the movie, but retaining his classic red and blue color scheme. His robot mode will look quite different, however, as I have a burning hatred for AoE and TLK Optimus's design. Well, I don't hate it as its own thing, but as Optimus, I'm not a fan. At all. We cut back to Attinger meeting with Savoy and his men. Attinger berates them for failing him yet again. Savoy points out that they didn't expect Bumblebee, or that Optimus would actually fight back this time. Attinger rebuts this by mentioning that all of Savoy's men are still alive. All Prime destroyed was an unoccupied APC. Savoy once more points out that Bumblebee's presence was unexpected and that Prime is stronger than Ratchet, so he's able to take more hits. He says that if they're going to bring Prime in, they'll need more firepower. Attinger agrees, and says that he'll need to meet with Joshua Joyce. We cut back to Optimus and Bumblebee as they arrive at the sanctuary deep in the Sonoran Desert of Arizona, where 4 Autobots are waiting for them. Bulkhead, who will basically be exactly like Movie Hound, as again, he was just Bulkhead with a different name. Drift, Hot Rod, who did appear in TLK originally, but I wanted to move him to here as I have plans. And probably the most prominent Autobot who never appeared in the movies, or at least one of the most prominent, Prowl. Crosshairs as a character felt like a strange addition to the roster, being a rather obscure Autobot. But I wanted to include a character that could serve a sort of Lancer role, calling into question why Optimus doesn't go nuclear on Cemetery Wind and KSI. Because Bumblebee would never suggest that, as he loves the humans more than Prime does. Drift would consider such an action dishonorable, striking at a weaker opponent. Hot Rod looks up to Optimus too much to call his orders into question, and Bulkhead, though he may agree with the sentiment, is too much of a teddy bear at his core to mention that. As Optimus and Bumblebee roll in, they are greeted by the other Autobots. Optimus transforms, and his look is not too dissimilar from his appearance in Transformers Prime, just with less of a waspy waist and more of a movie-ish flair, because he's a long nose now, not a flat nose.
Welcome back, Bossbot.
Prime. Good to see you're still alive.
Prowl, Bulkhead, Hot Rod, Drift. It does my spark good to see you all again.
For this new team, Prowl serves as First Lieutenant in Ironhide and Jazz's absence. Though B's been around Earth longer, Prowl is higher ranked, as he was a member of Autobot High Command back on Cybertron, along with Jazz, Ironhide, Ratchet, and Ultra Magnus, and Prime, of course. Prowl is also an elite guardsman, and so he has that training. Bulkhead is taking Ironhide's spot as weapons specialist. Bumblebee retains his role as scout. Drift serves as infiltrator and saboteur, doubling up on Mirage and RC's roles. And Hot Rod is just a soldier like Skids and the twins. Rod is about as old as Bumblebee, as both were among the final generation of Autobots made before the Well of All Sparks went dark. He is, however, less experienced than Bumblebee, much like Smokescreen in Transformers Prime, who was honestly just Hot Rod under a different name. Much like with the Jagers, there's going to be tension among the Autobot ranks, but unlike in the original film, where that tension comes across as the bots behaving like schoolchildren, it'll be a bit more, once again, like G.I. Joe Renegades. They all realize that they need each other, but being hunted down and betrayed has gotten them on edge. Plus, though Optimus knows and has worked with all of them, the other 5 have not fought together before. Bulkhead is an ex-wrecker, Prowl is elite guard, Drift is a Decepticon turncoat, and Hot Rod is a rookie. And of course, B was a part of the original Team Prime. Prowl doesn't trust Drift, doesn't like Bulkhead's methods, and thinks Hot Rod is too green to be useful. Bulkhead also doesn't trust Drift, and thinks Prowl has a stick up his tailpipe. Hot Rod thinks the same about Prowl, but is actually okay with Drift. Drift is a loner by nature, and only really trusts Optimus due to an experience in Drift's past with a certain skull-faced Decepticon who will feature more in future movies. So we have the Stick in the Mud, the Loose Cannon, the Lone Wolf, the Greenie, and Bumblebee, who's actually pretty well adjusted. Optimus, understandably, is going to face some problems leading this bunch, as they lack the synergy of the old Team Prime. Prowl notices Cade and Tessa and is noticeably displeased. All due respect, sir, but why did you bring humans here?
This human, Cade, saved my life, Prowl, and his brother gave his life in our escape.
Optimus doesn't understand the concept of a brother-in-law, so he just refers to Lucas as Cade's brother. Cade doesn't correct him, as Lucas may as well have been his brother with how close they were. Be that as it may, Prime, we're hiding in this desert because of his kind.
And the humans who now pursue us do so because of pain dealt to them by our kind, Prowl. Let us not stoop to their level, or to the Decepticons.
Yes, sir.
Bumblebee has told me that we have lost contact with Ratchet, Wheeljack, and Mirage, and I have been accosted by humans wielding Cybertronian weaponry.
I've encountered these humans as well. They found me while I was chasing down a lead, but I noticed them coming and slipped away without them noticing. I faced them before too. I was out on patrol near Phoenix and these APCs with energon turrets boxed me in. They thought they had me, but I used my stingers to disable them and get away. That's when I changed my paint job and went looking for you, Optimus.
Can't say I faced him myself, but I've lost contact with a few of my old wrecker buddies. Leadfoot, broadside, twin twist, all radio silent. Whirl got jumped too, but he was able to get away. Last I heard, he met up with Topspin and Roadbuster in Scotland. Any Autobot not in North America is safe for the moment, but the 6 of us must ensure that it stays that way.
How are we going to do that, Prime?
We must find the source of this weaponry, and we must cut off the supply line.
I might be able to help with that.
Stay out of this, human. Enough!
He gives Prowl a stern look, and the cop bot goes silent.
Go ahead, Cade.
I was able to snag this drone during our escape. It's made of some combination of our tech and yours. Might be able to give us some clue.
Very good.
Cade hooks the drone up to some of the Autobots' machinery because, unlike in the film, they aren't just vibing in the desert. They have a hologram projector and perception filter preventing them from being found by satellites or random hikers. The perception filter functions like the subsonic pulse that Soundwave used to keep people away from the Giza Plateau, just more localized. They also have a computer, lovingly dubbed Teletran 2 by Bumblebee. The drone shows Leadfoot, Twin Twist, Broadside, and Ratchet's deaths. The final one causes Optimus to close his eyes and clench his fists tightly. His anger and his compassion are colliding head-on, and the conflict that he has felt up to this point has only gotten worse.
This cannot be allowed to continue.
I agree. It's time we went to war, Prime. Put an end to these humans once and for all. We can't do that. If we take the fight to them, they'll be slaughtered. They can't stand up to 6 of us.
Exactly. The war will be over before it begins. Your suggestion lacks honor. Where's honor gotten us at this point? Betrayed and hunted down. At least 4 of our brothers have been killed by the humans. We must stop them before more sparks are lost. And we will. But there is still a chance to end this without spilling blood or more energon. If we can prevent them from getting more of our technology and destroy what technology they already possess, we can end this conflict once and for all.
And if that doesn't work,
then I will consider the alternative.
Prowl and Optimus stare each other down for a moment. Tension begins to build.
Well, before we do anything, we have to figure out where this tech is coming from. The label on the side of this thing says KSI. I ran that through your computer, and it led me to a company called Kinetic Solutions Incorporated, stationed in Chicago.
Ground Zero.
Then Chicago is where we must go. Autobots, transform and roll out!